Okay, hello. Thank you for coming. I'm Ruth Van Alstyne from Hope at Hand. Hope at Hand is a local nonprofit that provides poetry therapy programming for at-risk youth in North Florida. We also host Jack's Poetry Fest every April, which is free of charge and is funded by a variety of arts and culture grants, which we'll talk about at the end of the program. During the presentation, I'm going to be uploading QR codes to direct you to both donation and survey pages. If you have to leave early, please download these before you go and go to those pages. We'd really appreciate your input. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Carrie now, who will be leading today's workshop. So, Carrie, please take it away.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm so grateful that you could join me today. So I'm going to share my screen and we can go through the presentation. I guess make sure you have a paper and pencil handy or a pen. Most of you are writers, so I think that's probably nearby, but it's always a good idea. And hopefully you're in a space where you can take some time for yourself today. And, besides all the dogs on the phones and everything else that can be around you. So again, welcome. And feel free to put in the chat where you're coming from. But let's get started. Share my screen. Okay. Oops. I have a feeling you can't see that. Hold on one moment. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, Bonnie, I'm looking to you. I know you'll respond. I can only see a couple of pictures, but I was like, I can see Bonnie. Okay, thank you. You're my North Star today. So my name is Carrie Voigt Schonhoff, and I live in Madison, Wisconsin. And a few years ago, after my husband died in 2012, it kind of reset my life, and I had forgotten how much I loved writing. I'd written as a young person and then in college, but I kind of lost track of my passion for writing. So I decided to write. I love poems because they're quick and easy for me. And so I ended up publishing a couple of books. So one of them, the first one is called The Liminal Space. And the liminal space is the place before great transformation. It can be an uncomfortable place. I guess think of it as like being at the airport and being at the airport gate, waiting to go on your fantastic trip. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable. You're waiting to go on your fancy trip. So I felt like that was this journey that I was on, and it was the in-between place. And then after I published that, I got a lot of great responses. I didn't think that I would. And so I published my second book, which is called The End of the Beginning. And it's just a further exploration of my journey, my life, sometimes dipping back into my past. But for this workshop, I felt like I really had, some stuff that I could tell you, some just tips and the direction that I went with my book. There are many ways to go, but I felt like it'd be good to share my story. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand and we can talk it out. And I'm sure you guys, some of you might have other advice you can give budding authors. So feel free to chime in. So one of the things that I think is really important when you're thinking about publishing of any sort, so whether it be in magazines, online, a book, a novel, nonfiction, poetry, what have you, I want you to think about the commitment that you make to yourself. I've talked to a lot of people and they'll tell me, oh, I always wanted to write a book. I always thought that I could write a book. And I always tell them, write the book. Make the commitment to yourself because your words deserve to be heard. And I want you guys to think the same thing, that whatever you have to say um, is worth hearing, and whatever you write is worth reading. And to me, it started with the commitment to myself that I wanted to publish a book. And it wasn't like I had this, big dream of I'm going to publish a book and be a bestseller and, be on the Today Show. Although I still have that dream. But that wasn't the reason that I started this. I started because I wanted to share my work with others. So what I'd like us to do is, I know it's right out of the gate, we're going to do some writing, but I want you to think about a mission statement for yourself. I, Carrie, want to be a published author. I want to share my work with the world. I want to, maybe you want to, write a children's book and you love to share, your experiences with kids or whatever it is. And then I want you to do it, without judgment. I don't want you to judge yourself. Oh, I can't do that. You know what? There's a lot of other books in the marketplace that talk about that, and no one's going to be interested in what I have to say. And I just put the critic in the back seat and tell him to take a nap. So this is for you. This is about you making a commitment and why you need to do it. So we're going to take let's take 5 minutes. Write down some thoughts. It can just be words. It can just be phrases, ideas. But let's do that for 5 minutes. So 12:18 Eastern. Okay. One more minute. All right. Well, hopefully you've had a chance to think about things. I know sometimes 5 minutes seems like a long time. Um, but I was wondering if anyone would like to share what they wrote down. Anyone?
I'll share.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Um, I feel pretty much the way you did. I feel like I've always wanted to write a book. I'm not writing for any, big market or to make money, but it's just my own personal goal. And I took a chance last fall and met with a publishing company and then gave them a manuscript and got offered a publishing deal with them. So I'm working on my first book of poetry. And
How
I
great is
have to
that?
say, pardon?
How great is that?
I know. I'm excited, but I'm nervous too. But the thing of it is, I think once I got going, I almost feel like there's a second book in me. So it's like, you just kind of get the momentum. I will say it took a lot of nerve for me to meet with the publishers, and I was just scared out of my mind. Um, but I'm glad I did it. So I put myself out there.
It's great. I don't, it does take a lot of guts, and I don't think I had the chutzpah, to do it myself. It's tough with poetry too, because um it's not always a popular thing. It's not necessarily going to be a bestseller unless you're, Joan Baez, who produces a book of poetry like she just did, where you think, well, that's going to be a bestseller. It's hard to get a publisher, so I give you just a ton of credit for doing that. um and putting yourself out there. And I think once your book comes out, if it's anything like mine, it's like people read it and then they come up to you and they say how they relate to you, and they're laughing, they're crying, and they're just really, you know, it's so magical to me what happens after, a book comes out. And so I'm sure you have many books inside you. So I look forward to reading your book someday. So that's great. Um, does anyone else want to share what they've written, or some ideas? Okay, going once.
Actually, can I
Emily?
share?
Yeah. Yeah, great, Emily. Sure.
I've been writing poetry all my life. I do a lot of different creative things, but I just wrote down I want to share the struggle and the battle that I've been through in my life. Um, I want to walk in freedom and help set others free with what I write. Um, and I think it was, yeah, I want to put together a book of poetry because it is life-changing and powerful. Yeah, that's basically what I wrote. Those are more like broad ideas, maybe not so specific, but it's a start anyway. So
It's a wonderful start. And I think that so many times we feel alone and like other people don't get what we've been through. And so I think you're right on about sharing your struggles and things. And when you stand in your truth and then you share it with others, they do feel freedom. They feel like they're not alone and they're accepted and they're validated. And that's really one of the powers of poetry. So you're right on. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Shelley, you have your hand up?
Yep. This is from something longer that I wrote for a contest that I actually entered this year. I've written for a long time, but I generally don't have the guts to send anything out, but I'm trying to change that. So here we go. It has like a whole long bio thing in the top of it, which I'm not going to bother you guys with. But I basically lived through a near-death experience, almost got killed in an accident, and was too busy to write and decided that needed to change. So I started writing again. So this concludes with this. In many ways, I think my wonky, somewhat limited life is richer than it might have been without the derailment of all my plans. For that, and for still being here to walk along the river and appreciate the beauty of this crazy world, I am forever grateful. I've learned that hope, like inspiration, is not something you sit around waiting for. You have to make your own. The best way I know of doing that, the best ways I know of doing that are painting, writing, and getting out into nature. I set myself a quest to go out every single day and find one beautiful thing. Sometimes it's a flower or a bird or a pattern in the bark of a tree. Sometimes it's a child's chalk drawing on the sidewalk, a dried out seed pod, or the way the light reflects off the water. It doesn't have to be something most people would appreciate or think worthy of a photo, so long as it speaks to me. This is how I make hope and what I hope to convey in my writing and art. So that's it.
Beautiful. That is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And I mean, you're a poet at heart for sure. All the things that you notice. I think one of the, to me, one of the things about a writer in general is just that we notice things that others don't necessarily. And we bring like beauty to the reader, And so I was thinking about what you said, like you didn't have the guts to, do it, but now you entered a contest, which I'm really happy about. And I think, what's the worst that can happen? They say no? Okay.
Exactly. And I've gotten a couple rejections, but it's not going to stop me. I'm going to just keep doing it.
Right. And you do it for you because you know it's the right thing. And yeah, so for those of you that are kind of scared and trepidatious, I think the worst thing that can happen is they say no, and then you can find somebody else that wants to hear what you have to say. So thank you for sharing that, Shelley. Anybody else want to share? Okay, well, if you change your mind along the way, let us know. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna maybe
Hey,
just put it
Wendy.
in the chat, but I could. Well, I could share, I guess. Here, let's see. Um, okay. I want to share that our Blessed Mother is here for us. I don't want to push or force. I do want to offer a space of warmth and life force love, be her hand somehow through poetry, set a space, a vessel, space for heart to slow down and settle down in, to enter into what it needs most somehow, find a road. I picture small books of good quality and probably just a small audience.
Sounds wonderful. That just sounds beautiful. And I like how you're trying to be a vessel. I think that's true. You can call it muses, you can call it spiritual guides, mother, more of religious folks like Mother Mary and Jesus and things like that. But I do feel like we are a vessel. We see things and we feel things probably more than others. And so it's really important to be vulnerable and share those with others. So thank you for sharing, Wendy.
Thanks.
Okay, well, again, along the way, oops, someone put something in the chat. Yes, small books of good quality. True story. All right. So, once you've made the commitment to yourself, or you maybe might get there, a little cautious, but still working on the commitment. There are a few things that you need to take into consideration if you're going to self-publish in particular. Some planning, maybe set some deadlines, some milestone dates for yourself. Implementation, how is this going to work? How, the coordination of it all, costs, and promotion. How do you get your works out there? So I'm going to tell you my self-publishing story. And then, like I said, if you have any questions or contributions, just let me know. So I was in search of someone to help me put the poems together. And I found a mentor, I think reading Poets and Writers magazine, and I started working with him. There's a cost, either monthly cost or sometimes yearly cost to having someone like that. And I worked with him for a little while, and I started, writing some poetry, and he would edit it. But then it just wasn't, it turned into kind of a weird relationship. And he wanted me to start writing a novel. I just didn't want to do that. So I stopped that, but then I still continued to look for a mentor, and I found one in an author that I had read his books, and his name is Simon Van Voigt. He's out of New York, and he loves poets because it's a really beautiful art form. And so we started working together, and I contracted him for a year. And he said, at the end of this, I want you to capture your emotional journey. And I thought, okay, well, that sounds great. I didn't really know what it meant. And so, for you, if you can find somebody like that, an author maybe, sometimes on Facebook, authors will come up with, workshops, they'll call them, or mentorships, and they can help you with that. Also, you can have writers groups in your local area, or sometimes on Zoom. But find some sounding board. I think that's really important. And someone that can maybe take a second look at your work to just maybe make some edits here and there. It's always a good idea, in my opinion. I also had to overcome imposter syndrome, thinking, oh, I'm not a writer, I'm not a poet. I mean, let's not get crazy here, but really, once you start writing, you are a writer, you are a poet, you are a novelist. So just try to accept that, and not worry about that. That's something that you're not, because you are, right? Then implementing it, I mean, I had to dedicate time and energy. Reading is really important for writers to read, to kind of fill up the vocabulary in you, and then write. Also getting around, taking trips, seeing new things, meeting new people. This all helps. Setting up a space also to write is a good idea. I had a space, I have a desk at home, but I didn't really, it was kind of a multi, is the work desk, especially during COVID and everything else. So I recently set up a desk that faces my back 20 acres, and it's wonderful. It's a great space. It's beautiful. I just love it. It's really comfortable. So I encourage you to set up a space for yourself. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been in my car on my iPhone typing something, but it's important to set up some space and time for yourself. And then we met monthly. So I would send him the manuscript in Word, and then he would put his remarks. You can do the reviewer. So that's a good method, especially if you're not in person. And then we would discuss it. And he would gently try to steer me in direction that I needed to go. And once we had a pretty good manuscript together, I noticed that Wendy has her hand. Do you have your hand up? Wendy, or is it just that it was in the chat?
Oh, no, I don't. I don't know how
Oh,
that
okay.
happened.
Okay. Okay, just want to make sure I'm not missing something. So once we got this manuscript in a decent spot, we talked about publishing options. Again, it's really hard. I give Bonnie a ton of credit for getting a publisher and doing the legwork to do that. There are many publishers, small presses that are looking for manuscripts, but I decided to do a self-publishing method. And so he had some experience with Gorham Printing. They're out of Washington State. They're a small printer. And so we got some samples, book covers and pricing and things like that. And so I decided to go forward with Gorham Printing, and they're a great small printing operation. So costs. If you're going to self-publish in particular, there are going to be some costs. And like I said, if you're going to hire somebody to help you edit, there's a cost there too. Don't try not to let it be the barrier to getting your work out. Maybe instead of, getting everything done in a year, it's going to take a year and a half, or it maybe even a couple of years to get the book published and out the door. So don't try not to let that get in the way. There are many ways to do this, and like they're not as costly, but there's going to be some costs here if you're going to self-publish. So I paid for the editor. I obtained an ISBN, which is just on the back of your book, everyone, it shows like what the book is. It's your barcode. I paid for the printing, and I also contracted a designer at Gorham Printing, and they helped me. So I sent them the manuscript. They formatted it in, the size of the book and got everything together so it looked reasonable. And then we put the different pieces together, in the beginning of the book, you've got your acknowledgments, maybe your Library of Congress, and then you've got in the back the acknowledgments, things like that. So we got everything together. And then as far as the cover goes, so the first cover, this is my garden. So I just sent picture of my garden, and then I love dahlias. So this is kind of like a faded out dahlia. It's probably like really hard to see, but I just sent her a picture of my dahlia. I sent her a selfie, my picture, when I had shorter hair. And the bio, I also did get a couple of blurbs. So, in books when it says, well, this one is, a remarkable, awe-inspiring first collection of poems. So you get blurbs from other authors. I kind of had an in because I was working with an author. So he graciously gave me a blurb. And then he knew a poet, Lucas Hunt, and he gave me a blurb. So, it was just an element to have, I guess. And then the second book, so I decided to do the end of the beginning, and it had to do with, I guess, kind of how I felt about everything, but also I had a poem, and I'll just read it really quickly. It's called The End of the Beginning. Black and orange monarchs dot the cool slate sky. They will soon gift their color to the autumn leaves, surrender to something bigger. And so I talked to my daughter, and she is college age, and she's also an artist. And so she did the cover. So, which I love, and again, just supply the pieces and parts to the designer, and they'll put it all together and send you a draft of it, and then you can approve it. Any questions so far? Okay. So we get the book done. The first book I published, and I kind of just didn't understand the impact it was going to have. So I did arrange a couple of bookstores. I had a couple of readings, things like that. And then I tried to, have my books at like local bookstores. Sometimes they'll do consignment. Sometimes they'll buy a couple of copies. Um, but for my second book, I decided that if I was really serious about this and I really wanted to get it out there, which I did, I really wanted to get my poems out there, that I really needed to kind of up my game. So I hired a publicist. And it has been one of the best decisions because I do have a full-time job and this is a passion project for me. So, it really helps me with social media and just, regular posts about poems, and I'll send her haikus to put in, and she formats them and puts them with pictures and gets them out there. I have a website and I try to blog regularly. It's just amazing. She's sending my work out to contests or to magazines or publications. I just recently I have a poem called Memorial Day coming out around Memorial Day in a publication in Wisconsin. So that's exciting. Reminds me of things, keeps me organized. I just sometimes it's a lot for me to keep, just my regular life organized, much less, my poet life. So it does cost a little bit, but to me, I think it's worth it because again, it's getting it out there. It's a steady stream. And, if I can get more followers and things like that, when book 3 comes out in the fall, I can, I will have a base of people that might buy the book and it'll be easier to get it out there. So there are a lot of benefits that I've seen. She sends me a monthly report on how things are going. I talk with her once a week. I highly recommend having someone help you if you have the money and desire to do that, because it does take a lot. And I'm not on TikTok. I'm this side of too old to probably do that right now, but I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and so that works for me. The website is through Wix, Wix, and I think it's a pretty light lift for anyone that's familiar with that way of creating a website. And I did create an LLC. So kind of a little company. I call it Liminal Artistry LLC. And that's a good idea for, kind of tax purposes, keeping track of your business, keeping it separate from your expenses. So I highly recommend it. It's not costly at all to set it up, but it can really help you out, especially if you have a lot of expenses versus income with that. I originally put my book on Amazon, which I thought, was kind of like a vanity, like, oh, I've arrived, I'm on Amazon. It was kind of tough to set it up initially. Wasn't really that easy for me. I think because I was self-publishing, and so I still had the books in my possession. But they, I was going with Amazon. Now, I will say I've seen people use BookBaby, and that's kind of a self-publishing arm through that you can go through Amazon, and it's a little bit easier. And that's more of like a print ship scenario. So in my case, I ordered a bunch of copies. Like, let's say I would order 500 copies of my book, and then I have it at my house. And if somebody if they bought a book, then I would ship it from my house. In the case of the print ship, if you run it, if somebody buys a book on Amazon that is set up that way, then it will print then and ship from them. And so you don't have to have, a load of books in your house like I do. And, they take care of everything. So it's a less expensive option as well. I haven't done it, but I do know people that have done it and they're successful. So One thing I would keep in mind with that is make sure to check the quality of the book when it gets, order a few copies for yourself. Make sure that things are, not getting cut off. I saw one print ship book that of a poet, and I was disappointed. It kind of, the way it printed, it kind of lopped off a little bit. So definitely do a quality check for yourself if you do go that route. Once the website got in a little bit better shape, we were able to put the books there. I still have them in both places. Again, I think it's probably a vanity thing on my part, but that's probably a good way to do it if you have the stock yourself. So just something to keep in mind. So once I had this last book, I really took that show on the road, and I went to bookstores and cafes. I even went to a different country in Vienna and had an Instagram live from a cafe there. And so, I just tried to go as many places as I could. Places like this festival are great. Just try to cultivate the opportunities, and my posts really help with that. It also afforded me trips to poetry jams with kids in schools. And that has really been amazing. So we're talking about fourth, fifth, sixth graders, and they have poetry unit. And a teacher that I know said, "Hey, we want to put together a poetry jam. What do you think?" So I go in, the kids are there, and I talk a little bit about myself, read some poems, and then I get to listen to their poetry and compliment them. So, it's just the best. They ask me a million questions, like how much do you make and what's your favorite car? But they're great. I read a poem recently to a group, and it was about seeing ghosts, when the lights flicker or something happens and you think, oh, maybe that's somebody that has died and wants to say hello. And afterwards, a young girl came up to me and she said, my mom died, and there's a cardinal that comes into our yard, and I think it's her. These are just magical experiences that I never could have counted on. And I think that's important to keep in mind, is that, you can think about what you're going to do. You're going to produce a book, things like that. But it's the magical things that happen that you had no idea could happen or would happen that are waiting for you. And so I really want you to think about that when you're writing and trying to, put something together. The promotions, like I said, did all the signings and events at the bookstores, libraries, cafes. I love having my books in libraries. I think that's so cool. Open mics, I did a couple of those. That's kind of interesting sometimes. I joined Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets and attended a couple of events there, and that was really great. So something local to you that you could join. And sometimes I'll meet up with folks and I think, I'm not sure they're from my tribe, but we have similar interests. So if you run into that where you don't feel like you maybe fit in, just keep on trying, because you'll find people. I've also done some residencies, which are really great. And, it's not that hard to get into the residencies. There might be a little cost with it. Sometimes you can get grants. But I did one in South Carolina. It's called South Porch Residency for a week. It was at an old mansion. And that was great. I got to be around different artists. Then in February, I went to Temecula, California, to Dorland Arts Community. That was good. It was a little bit different too, in that I had my own cabin and I was kind of on my own a lot for the week. But a beautiful setting and definitely inspiring. And it's just good to have that time where no one's really bugging you. You can just sit down and do what you've got to do. You can write, you can go out and take a walk, you can look at the mountains. And so I highly encourage you to do that. In addition, I have tried to meet with book clubs. So there was a book club at the library nearby, and so they bought a bunch of books. They put them in a book club kit, and then I met with the book club, and so that was great too. Workshops like this is great. And I mentioned the poetry jams. Interviews, I managed to get some interviews in the newspaper, and actually my hometown newspaper, which was great. It was fun. And magazines, and I even was on the morning show in Milwaukee. That was fun. It's like 4 minutes, you know, and you're on. So that was a little scary, but it was fun. And radio, I've been on a couple of radio programs, local radio here. So it's all possible. I did record my audiobooks just for the heck of it because I felt like it. And I have somebody nearby that is a producer, and we recorded it in his studio, so it was not a heavy lift. And Find Away Voices is a good place to look into, and their distributor for audiobooks. So like I said, I'm working on book 3. I'm going to go to residency in late July, beginning of August, to Chateau d'Urqueville. I'm probably slaughtering the name. It's in Champagne, France, and I'm going with my daughter for 2 weeks. So that's going to be a great time. So I feel successful, right? I've had a couple of books. I've sold some copies. I've got them in different countries. Been to different events, going to residencies, and the successful blog and media presence. So I'm hoping that I inspire you that you can do it. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. So I guess I know we're kind of running tight on time, but I was wondering if any of you, feel like you feel a little bit better about your story and things you want to talk about, or you want to talk about fears and blockers that you're worried about, so we can kind of maybe work through those. Does anyone want to share?
Well, I guess
Maybe?
I could ask, you kind of went through really fast that, don't let the cost intimidate you, but it's how. So, like, my situation is that I'm just on disability, so I don't have a much income, and also I'm homebound because of medical issues, so I can't go out and do residencies and stuff. So it would all be to be online and inexpensive. So, what would you recommend in someone in that situation?
Well, I think that there are probably a lot of grants that you could look into. And I think if you look at your local, like the Fellowship of Poets, or maybe some local organizations, they could probably lead you in the right direction. I would recommend doing that. And also I would look into maybe some virtual things. This is a great festival for that. But and maybe Hope at Hand has some resources for you as well. Maybe they can point you in the right direction. But I think that, so what you're talking about is a more virtual presence. And luckily today, that's really an accepted thing, right? So I think that, you could publish something and it would be online. Maybe it doesn't need to be in a book form. It can be in electronic form. And that, I don't think that would cost a lot to do. I think BookBaby and I'm trying to think of the other one, but there are some ways to publish online, and they're not hard copies. So those are some things that I would recommend to you. How's that sound?
Okay. Are there any specific groups that you'd recommend or anything to join?
Um, I'm not a member except for the local in Wisconsin. But I'm wondering, maybe we can ask Ruth, if she has any, are there anything in the chat? Okay. Does anyone here have any organizations that they're in virtually? Maybe we could talk about that.
Well, Carrie, for publishing, if you don't have money, Amazon.com, the Amazon publishers, it's not Amazon, but you go to their publishing thing. They don't charge you to publish their books. It's on demand. So there's no fees. So if you don't have money to self-publish, that is an option. I don't believe that there's any fee yet or now. So that's an option. As far as groups, I don't really know here in North Florida, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. Yeah,
I would try a strong Google search and
yeah,
see
I would
all of
think
some.
if you researched it, you could get more information on that. But yeah.
So there are a couple questions in the chat. Which did you say you found easier and more affordable, self-publishing with Amazon or BookBaby, and why? I haven't done BookBaby, but Ruth is indicating that she thinks there aren't a lot of costs or any costs, which I think there's probably something. And that connects with Amazon. I think that's definitely a less expensive way to go than doing the self-publishing the way I went with the Gorham printing, because like I said, like I have the inventory and I paid for the inventory, whereas Amazon, it's a print ship. Somebody orders it, it goes out. You don't have to carry the inventory. So I definitely think that it's quicker to do something on demand. And how did you find the retreats and residencies? My publicist helped me with that, but you can do a search and you can find a lot of them. I think, what are the costs? How long do you have to be there? There was one in Greece, but you had to be there at least 2 weeks. And I was like, I want to go to Greece, but I don't think I can fit 2 weeks in with my vacation schedule. And, what's the cost of getting there? So I would look into the costs, but there are a lot of them out there. Let's see here. And also I would ask just a lot of questions like how many people are going to be there? What are the accommodations like? Things like that. One residency I was going to go to, they sent me a list of rules in the house and like things, and it just was, I felt like I was going to be in jail for the week. So I highly recommend that, you kind of really research the ins and outs of it. And sometimes you might need a reference letter, but a lot of them will, as long as you're willing to pay or you have the schedule for it, you'll be fine. How did you know when your book is ready to be published? I've written so many poems, and how do I know if it's good enough? I think this is where the second opinion comes in, of somebody that is maybe a little bit more connected to the published world. I guess, Bonnie, do you have any advice on how, you thought, I'm ready, my manuscript is ready? Like, what did it take to get to that stage?
I think for me, I think it just became a personal goal of mine. And then my muse is my mother-in-law. She self-published a book of poetry back in the 70s. And she had about 30 poems. So I said to myself, 30, and that's it. So I gave myself that cutoff. I think the other thing that really has helped me for the last 10 years, I've been in various writers groups and poets groups, and the critique and the feedback has made me a better writer. And I try to do anything I can to learn, like a workshop like this or anything that's offered. And I did work with a mentor for a while also. I paid for that, and that was helpful too. And my mentor had self-published a book of poetry. So being open to the critique and just getting to a point. I mean, you're never done. We're never done writing. So you just have to cut it off and say, this is it, and it's going out.
Right on.
Yeah.
Any other questions or things you want to share today? All right, well, we will hand it over to Ruth. Thanks so much to everyone, and I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it.
Okay, Carrie, if you'll stop the screen share and I will put up mine for Hope at Hand. So thank you all for coming, and I have the survey QR code up there, so we'd love to have your feedback, and you can take a picture of this QR code. It will go to the survey page, and we appreciate donations that keep our poetry therapy sessions available for Hope at Hand, and also to be able to do Jack's Poetry Fest. And these are some of our larger donators. And also we get funding from people like you. And so thank you to our sponsors. And we appreciate your support. And so this is a QR code, and there's also a URL in the chat. And so if you are so moved, we would appreciate anything that you might care to contribute. And so with that, thank you very much, Carrie, for doing this workshop today. It was a great one, as was your others. And we have workshops this weekend on Saturday and Sunday, so I hope you all have signed up for those. And have a great weekend, everyone. And so that's a wrap.
Wow.